Welcome back to She Rises Daily, Emerging You in 10. I'm your host, Doc Shelley, here to bring you your daily dose of inspiration, empowerment, and growth. Have you ever noticed how quickly we label people? She's difficult. He's lazy. They're impossible. Sometimes we're even harder on ourselves. I'm just not good at conflict. I'm just not organized. I'm just not leadership material. One of my biggest pet peeves is the word just. I'm just a nurse. I'm just an engineer. I'm just an assistant. Every time I hear someone say that, I find myself wondering, who convinced you that your contribution needed the word just in front of it? Because words matter. The language we use does not just describe our world, it quietly shapes our world. Today, I want to talk about the labels we create, the labels other people hand us, and the powerful choice we have about which labels we are willing to wear. Behavior is information. Labels are interpretations. Let's start with something simple here. Behavior tells us what happened. Labels tell us who we think someone is. Missing a deadline, behavior. Calling someone irresponsible, that's a label. Having one awkward conversation is an experience. Calling yourself bad with people is a label. Making a mistake is an event. Calling yourself a failure is a label. Our brains are incredibly fast at turning moments into identities. Moments are temporary. Identity deserves much more careful consideration. Not every label deserves your agreement. People are always going to have opinions about you. Sometimes those opinions will be accurate. Sometimes they will be incomplete. And sometimes those opinions are completely wrong. You may be told you're too emotional, too ambitious, too quiet, too direct, too inexperienced, too much, or not enough. Here's what I've learned. Just because someone hands you a label does not mean you have to wear it. Wisdom is not believing every opinion that is offered. Wisdom is asking, is this true? If it helps you grow, pay attention to it. If it limits who you are becoming or who you are, you have permission to put that label down. I remember a conversation years ago where someone was trying to explain to me how I was feeling. They were assigning motives. They were interpreting my emotions, telling me what they believed was happening inside my own head. The interesting thing was, they were wrong. I finally looked at them and said, "You are assigning me a label I am not willing to wear." And I've never forgotten that moment, not because I was trying to win an argument, because it reminded me of something really important. People will assign labels to us throughout our lives. Sometimes they do it intentionally. Sometimes they do it without even realizing it. The question isn't whether labels will be offered, because they will. The question is, which labels are you willing to accept? Be careful about the labels you give yourself. Sometimes the labels that do the most damage aren't the labels from other people. They're the ones we quietly repeat to ourselves. I'm just. Those two little words can become a prison. I'm just bad at conflict. I'm just not creative. I'm just the kind of person who. Every time you say those words, ask yourself, am I describing a permanent identity or a skill I haven't developed yet? Growth becomes much more possible when we stop confusing today's reality with tomorrow's potential. I say this a lot, words change worlds. One of the things I've learned through years of coaching is that better conversations often begin with better language. The words we choose shape how we think. How we think shapes how we behave. How we behave shapes our relationships. Words really do change worlds. That's why I'm intentional about the language I use, not because it's about being politically correct, because it's about being psychologically accurate. When we choose language that leaves room for growth, We leave room for people to grow, including ourselves. Here's your reflection question. What label have you been carrying that no longer reflects who you are or who you want to be? And is it a label you are truly willing to wear? And your power thought, don't let one moment become an identity, and don't let someone else's opinion become your name. You don't get to control every opinion people have about you. You don't get to stop every label someone may try to hand you. You do get to decide what you will accept. You get to decide what you repeat. You get to decide what becomes part of your identity. Choose the words carefully, because the language you believe about yourself will quietly shape the life you build. This week, pay attention to your language. Notice every time you hear yourself say, "I'm just," or every time someone hands you a label, pause and ask yourself, is this a label I'm willing to wear? If the answer is no, leave that label where it belongs. You don't have to carry every word that is handed to you. Thank you for joining me for another episode of She Rises Daily, Emerging You in 10. If today's episode encouraged you, please share it with someone who's been carrying a label for far too long. Sometimes one conversation, one question, or even one new word can begin to change the way we see ourselves. Until next time, remember, words have power. Choose them carefully. They don't just describe your world, they help create your world.